Hello SLAPAFISH community, welcome back to another World Tanks console video. So in this video, I'm actually going to be doing a little bit different. So, in the game, there are special tanks called Preferential Tanks. What is a Preferential Tank? It is a tank that plays different from its tier. And I'm going to be showing you the Premium Preferential Tanks, because there are three tanks that are preferential, but I'm just going to be showing you the Premium Preferential Tanks. Let's get into the video. I also will have video chapters so you can skip around by country. So, in the first is the T7 cars. All of the T7 cars are preferentials. These are tier 2 American light tanks, and they have same tier matchmaking. So basically, the highest tier they can meet is tier 2. Next is the T2 light tank, which is a tier 2 American light tank. Now, this one has different matchmaking. Remember how I said tier 2 can only play up to tier 3? This has different matchmaking than that. This is a tier 2 tank that can play up to tier 4. So basically, it has worse matchmaking than the rest of its tanks in its own tier, which is, I think, the only tank in this list that has that. Anyway, next tank is the M4 Improve, which is a USA tier 5 medium tank that plays up to tier 6. Next is the M4 A2E4, which is a American medium tank that's a tier 5 that plays up to tier 6. Next is the T23E3, a tier 7 American medium tank that plays up to tier 8. Next is the Super Pershing, a tier 8 American premium tank that plays up to tier 9. Next is the T95E2, which is a tier 8 American medium tank that plays up to tier 9. Next is the Bogcore, which is a tier 8 American heavy tank that plays up to tier 9. And there should be a T14 in the list. And I forgot to take a picture of the T14. But the T14 is a tier 5 American heavy tank that plays up to tier 6. Next is the T28 Concept, which is a tier 7 American tank destroyer that plays up to tier 8. Next is the Panzer IV Hydrostat, which is a tier 5 German medium tank that plays up to tier 6. Then we have the Panther M10, a tier 7 German medium tank that plays up to tier 8. It's one of the few tier 7s that are preferential tanks. Next is the Panther 88, a tier 8 German medium tank that plays up to tier 9. Next is the Panzer II-B, which is a tier 4 German heavy tank that plays the same tier. So basically, it has the same tier matchmaking. It will never meet any tank above its tier. Next is the VK6501H, a tier 5 German heavy tank that plays up to tier 6. Then we have the Tiger 131, which is a tier 7 preferential heavy tank that plays up to tier 8. It's also German. Then we have the Hidden, which is a tier 5 tank destroyer for Germany that plays up to tier 6. Then we have the E25, a tier 7 German premium tank destroyer that plays up to tier 8. Then we have the Tiger 88, a tier 8 German tank destroyer that plays at tier 9. Then we have now we move on to the British. Then we have the Defiance, a tier 5 medium tank that plays at tier 6. Next is the Grizzly 1, a tier 5 UK medium tank that plays at tier 6. Then we have the Matilda Black Prince, which is a tier 5 UK medium tank that plays up to tier 6. Then we have the Excelsior, which is a tier 5 heavy tank British that plays up to tier 6. Then we have the British Bulldog, which is a British heavy tank tier 6 that plays up to tier 7. Then we have the iconic TOG 2, which is a UK heavy tank, tier 6, that plays up to tier 7. Then we have the AT-15A, a tier 7 British tank destroyer that plays to tier 8. Now we move on to Russian, Soviet, which is the Valentine 2, which is a tier 4 medium tank that plays up to tier 4. So basically, you can't meet tier 5s or anything higher than tier 4 in this tank. Then we have the Champion M4, which is a tier 5 Soviet medium tank that plays up to tier 6. Then we have the Matilda 4, which is a tier 5 Soviet medium tank that plays up to tier 6. Then we have the KV-222, a tier 5 Soviet heavy tank that plays up to tier 6. Then we have the Churchill 3, a tier 5 Soviet heavy tank that plays up to tier 6. Then we have the Soviet tier 8 heavy tank, IS-6, that plays up to tier 9. Then we have the KV-5, a tier 8 Soviet heavy tank that plays up to tier 9. Next we have the Su-85I, a Soviet tier 5 tank destroyer that plays up to tier 6. Now we move on to the next country, which is France. And this is the only French preferential tank in the entire game that is premium, which is the FCM-50T tier 8 French heavy tank for tier 9 that plays at the tier 9. Now we move on to Japan, which this is the China Kai, tier 5 Japanese tier 6 medium tank. Then we have the Warlord Panther, which is a tier 7 medium tank that plays up to tier 8. Then we have the Senshi, the STA-2, which is a tier 8 Japanese medium tank that plays up to tier 9. Now we move on to China, which is the Type 59 tier 8 medium tank that plays up to tier 9. Then we move on to the T-34-3, which is a Chinese tier 8 medium tank that plays up to tier 9. Then we have the WZ-111 tier 8 heavy tank that plays up to tier 9. Then we have the WZ-112 Chinese heavy tank that plays up to tier 9, which is a tier 8 tank. And the last preferential tank in the game is the Boulder Mercenary tank, or the Banana Buster, which is a tier 7 heavy tank that plays at the tier 8. And this is a heavy tank for Mercenaries. So that's it for the list. I believe that's 42 tanks. And yeah, that's it for this video. Remember, like, comment, subscribe, also remember to SLAPAFISH, because we're watching that, and peace out, see ya!